Welcome back.
How's it going?
I'm going to assume they say it's good.
So glad you guys could all make it here today.
We're so...
You hear that? It's the fucking novel Madison has typed up. I like that.
Thanks.
Sounds like a deck of cards shuffling.
That's a great noise.
It is. I love it.
Okay, well, this is going to be part 1 of 3 parts of the Cleveland kidnapping.
If you've ever heard of such a thing.
I assumed everyone did.
Yes, everyone has.
But
if you haven't, that'd be
weird.
Odd.
But we live here.
True.
It's close to us.
True.
It was national news, but I don't know if people from Ohio will know all of this stuff. So I got all of my information from the books the girls wrote, and I have a problem condensing like news articles, so I have an extra problem condensing the words of actual victims.
Dude.
I'm like, who am I to say this isn't an important part?
I know.
So I have included everything, and it's 3 parts long. And Gina and Amanda wrote a book together, but then Michelle wrote a book by herself. Yeah. So it's 2 separate books, so that's why it's so long. But I had to include everything.
Yep.
So I didn't go to any outside sources for this, so if you know like any news articles or anything like that I left out, I did it on purpose. I just wanted to include the story as they wanted it to be told. And that's how I'm going to do it. So part 1 is going to be, I'm going to tell up to when the last girl gets kidnapped. So I'm going to do all of their backgrounds, how they get kidnapped, things like that. Part 2 will be living in the house. And these 2 parts are going to heavily involve sexual assault. So if that's a specific trigger for you, you might not want to listen to these parts. And then part 3 is going to be the escape and everything after the escape, and that one's a little lighter.
Escape.
So even if you just like want to know more about the girls, you can listen to part 1, and then if you really don't want to know the gruesome details of what happened, you can wait next week for part 3 and listen to the happier ending and skip the dark middle. So I'm going to start because this is going to be super long. Not only is it 3 parts, these are the longest notes I've ever written.
You've been working on this for a long time.
Forever. I think Betty Broderick was one of my longest physical notes, and that was like 13 pages, 13 or 19, somewhere in there. These are all like 24, 27.
Nice.
So I'm going to really try to make these like not 3 hour-and-a-half episodes, because that's ridiculous.
That's what it is.
So
I'm here for it.
Let's get started.
Let's.
We have everything we need in here. We're just holding up and doing them all at one time. Because if you are part of the Patreon, all 3 parts will be available at the same time.
Yep.
But still, please download them when they come on iTunes.
Please.
Okay. So we're going to start with Michelle. Michelle will be Ariel Castro's first victim. So I'm going to go in order. And I do want to say, once we get to like part 2, Amanda had a journal that she dated. So her story is very linear. Michelle's is not. So when I get to like details and things, I'm trying to place them the best I can, but they might not be in exact order. So if I say Michelle did something referencing to Amanda, and then later Amanda does it like a couple pages later, I tried. Okay, so Michelle had a really hard life before she was even kidnapped. Like, it just wasn't great for Michelle immediately. When she was around 4, her and her family, which is her mom, her dad, her twin brothers, and her cousin, lived in a station wagon. And they all lived in that station wagon for like a year. Like, this wasn't a small stint.
It was their home for a time being.
Yeah, and sometimes they only had food because they would park and sleep next to an apple orchard. So Michelle would just like fill her book bag with apples. There would just be apples everywhere.
Wow.
So she said they moved houses often, like every 2 to 3 months they were moving into a different home, but the houses were always in bad parts of neighborhoods and cities, and like they always had her aunt and her cousin with them. And I mean like bad neighborhoods, like they would hear gunshots at night, and Michelle would just like take her brothers in a closet like it was normal. Like, well, we're just gonna wait. We're just gonna wait it out in here. You know, things that are not at all normal for children.
No.
So when they moved into their first house, a bunch of family and friends moved in with them. And Michelle remembers being annoyed, like, where were all of you when we were sleeping in our car? Like, now we have a house and you're all up in our shit. So there were 12 people living in this house.
Oh my
12.
God. That's wild.
Wild. And there weren't even enough beds, so Michelle and her brothers would just have to sleep wherever every night, like wherever there was an open space that night they would sleep. So they didn't have bedrooms or beds or anything like that.
Jeez. Poor kids.
Mm-hmm. And she said when she was still very young, I want to say, there wasn't a timeline for this either, but I want to say like 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
She got up in the middle of the night to get water, and when she got back to her bed, a man from her family was sitting there, and he told her to try to get away, and then he molested her while she was crying.
Oh my gosh.
And he told her he would kill her if she told anyone. So she didn't tell anyone, and this went on several times a week and eventually every day.
Oh my God.
How disgusting.
That is disgusting. Like, how terrible. You're just dreading going to bed.
Yeah, someone who lives in your home with your family is taking advantage of you like that.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah.
That's just the beginning of her life.
Yes, like, just awful from the get-go. Meanwhile, Michelle was the one who took care of the kids. Like, she would get her cousins and her brothers showered and ready for school. Like, she was the reason they ate food.
Yeah.
So, she's also dealing with that. She said they were glad when they had food to feed them, but her parents hardly ever had jobs, and they never had hot food. So, like cereal and Pop-Tarts, things like that they would eat. She said one time she wanted her brothers to have hot food, so she tried to heat up ravioli on the radiator.
Oh my God.
Like, they just had no hot food ever. She was like, we could try this. And then it didn't work.
That's crazy.
Awful. Michelle fell really behind in school because she missed school so much. Like, her parents would pull her out a lot for who knows what, like appointments, funerals, anything like that. So Michelle was around 12 or 13 years old, and she was still in the 5th grade.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like behind.
That is terrible.
Yeah. She said teachers did seem worried, but they can only help you so much.
Yeah.
If you're not in school to get the help. She was never in school, so how are they going to help her? And one teacher did ask if everything was okay at home, but Michelle just said yes because she knew it. Like, how is she going to explain all of this stuff now? So she just said it was fine. She also had no friends. She had pretty poor hygiene, and she tried to talk to a girl, and the girl was like, girl, your breath stinks.
Oh my God.
So Michelle was like, well, I'm not going to talk to anyone else ever again.
So sad.
Awful. She only really liked art in school. She said she loved drawing so much. She would draw houses she wanted to live in and happy families eating together. She was closest to her cousin April, who was a few years older than her. April had a part-time job, so she had extra money and would give Michelle like some of her clothes and take her to get fast food with her extra money. She would basically just take Michelle to do things like skating, anything to get out of the house.
Yeah.
And Michelle was very happy to get out of the house at any time.
How nice.
She said when she turned 15, the molestation just got worse and worse.
Well, yeah, you would imagine the older she gets.
Yeah, the worse. So, she slipped the guy sleeping pills in his drink, praying he would leave her alone. And Smart. He did fall asleep, and she used that opportunity to run away. Yes. Michelle said living on the streets was hard. You don't really sleep when you're homeless because you're always scared a stranger is, like, gonna come and kill you or, like, steal your shit or, like, mess with you or anything. And she would just spend all day walking with her head down because she was really, really short, and she didn't want people to think she was, like, an 8-year-old who was lost.
Oh, yeah.
She's short. Oh. Like, when you look at pictures of her, she's probably, like, 4'9".
Oh.
Tiny.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very short.
Small. So eventually she found this little cove under an overpass. An overpass is basically a bridge. So she said the cove was a perfect place to live because you couldn't see where she was from the street. So, like, no cops were going to see her sleeping outside. No strangers were going to see her to come mess with her and rob her. She found a garbage can, and she dragged it under there and slept inside the garbage can for extra protection.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, like head first, legs poking out of this garbage can. Because it's November in Ohio.
Oh, my God.
Freezing.
That's terrible.
And I think Cleveland's by the lake. The lake effect cold is a whole different cold.
It's bitter. And the wind and...
Yeah, and she said she was already wearing every piece of clothing she owned.
Oh my God.
It was freezing. So she slept in a garbage can under a bridge. And then after a week, she had only eaten like one sandwich that she stole from a gas station and like some other small scraps here and there. And she didn't even know it was Thanksgiving at this point. Oh. Thanksgiving. She was walking around during the day when she smelled food coming from this church. And she just kind of like stopped because it smelled so good. And at that same time, a man had opened the door and he invited her in. She calls him Arsenio because he looks like Arsenio Hall. I'm certain that's not his name.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, you don't? I only know him from Celebrity Apprentice. He was a comedian.
Oh, okay.
He's like a tall, skinny black guy.
Okay.
So he invited her in, and she said she was so embarrassed. She hadn't bathed or brushed her teeth in a week. Like, her hair was matted from sleeping on a garbage can. But she said he still invited her in to eat, and he told her he might have a coat for her. She said she had never eaten such good food in her life.
Yeah, I believe it.
And I'm certain that's true, but this was also a Baptist church, so this had to be like straight up soul food. Like macaroni and cheese and greens and like real good food. I know, after not eating for a week.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she said it was a buffet style, so she said she ate like 3 plates.
Absolutely.
She's like, this is so good, and I have no idea when I'm going to eat again.
Yeah, I'd be shoving it in my pockets.
Yeah, she said she probably looked crazy.
Probably,
but she did not care.
Fuck no.
She said the man did give her a coat. It was like 3 sizes too big, but she said it was like he handed her a check for $1 million. Like, it was just the greatest thing she had ever owned. And the church also had gift bags that day that, like, a charity had donated, so she left with that coat and, like, shampoo and toothpaste and a toothbrush.
Wow.
I know. How crazy. That's when she learned that the church did dinners every weekday at 5 p.m. So she was there, like, every day.
Nice.
That is so generous. I was kind of
every
thinking
day?
that sounds not normal. Every day.
But, well, I don't know, like the soup kitchens and stuff.
Oh, that's true.
I've helped at a soup kitchen. I imagine they do it every day.
You know what? Maybe you're right. I was thinking, like, church-wise, it seems odd, but I guess it's a normal
like the
practice.
Mission.
Yeah. So, yeah, she was there every day. She also didn't have a watch, and phones weren't a thing, so she just had to guess when 5 o'clock was.
Oh.
Yeah, and just hope that she didn't miss it.
That reminds me of The Pursuit of Happiness.
No.
Have you watched that movie?
Yeah, it ruined my life.
Okay. I understand.
It's one of the only movies
make you cry.
I'll cry every time.
Yeah. Oh,
when they're in that bus station sleeping.
Or when he's yelling at his dad.
And he's acting like they're in like a dinosaur or something.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I start there and I never stop after that. So yeah. Kind of like that. So she would just like have to guess when to go to church. And then she also started going to the services. She loved them, and the people were so nice. She also started rinsing off in the church bathrooms. Like, she would have to wipe herself down with towels. She would rinse her head in the sink. And then she would take extra paper towels for that time of the month. Because she had no other way to handle that.
Oh, my God.
Just things you don't even think of.
Oh, and, like...
scratchy paper towels to put in her underwear.
That's terrible.
Awful. And then one night... everything changed, and she was sleeping when she heard a man's voice under the overpass. So she, like, jumped up. She had a bat. She was ready to, like, hit this man. When the guy was like, hey, it looks like you could use some money. She was like, does it?
You don't fucking say.
Yeah, it was like, my name is Sniper. And Michelle asked he asked Michelle how old she was. and she was 15. And he said that he sold weed and E and was looking for more runners to help him and told her to get up and they would walk and talk about it. So he gets in his car and he takes her to his house, and she said his house was so nice. Like fish tanks, waterfalls, like your typical drug dealer type of bougie ass house. And she said he looked like he was like 18. So an 18-year-old rich drug dealer house. He told her that she could sleep in his room tonight and pointed out his other runner's room and then gave her shower stuff and told her to go wash up and asked if she needed anything else. And then she just kind of looked at him like all awkward. And he was like, oh, okay, I got it. And then he went to the store and bought her tampons.
Wow.
I know. It's like, I did not see this happening this way. No. She said she showered for a full hour, like hot ass water.
Oh, God. Can you imagine?
No. She said the water going into the drain was totally black for the first 20 minutes. Oh, my God. Then she got out of the shower and was like wondering if it was really too good to be true. But she climbed into bed for the first time in weeks, and Sniper went and slept on the couch, and she just like slept the whole night in his giant ass bed. She woke up the next morning to breakfast cooking, and they ate, and she met Roderick, who was the other runner who he pointed out last night, and she learned that he was from Saudi Arabia, and he was 16, and he had been living on the streets since he was 13.
Wow.
I think his parents moved back to Saudi Arabia, and he refused to go, something of that caliber. So they all watched a movie that night, and then Sniper said tomorrow they'd start getting ready to do runs and teach her how to use a gun and things like that.
Damn, a true rags to riches.
Straight up. Cinderella story. So, Sniper taught Michelle how to shoot a gun, and she was obviously very scared. Like, does he expect me to actually shoot people?
Yeah,
like, am I going
have to on the streets, man?
Am I going to be shooting people? This is also the bad part of Cleveland, which is not the greatest.
The hood.
It is. LeBron can only do so much for one city. It's not the greatest.
And fuck you, Tristan Thompson.
Oh, yeah, I forgot he was from there. Cheater.
Whatever.
Not that we have... Toledo's not any better.
No.
If anything, it's much worse because we have nothing to offer. At least Cleveland has something to offer aside from all of this violence.
We have the Toledo Walleye and Mud Hens, okay?
We have a great, great minor sports league here, and we go to town for it.
Fuck yeah, we do. Days off for the
days off. Games. So she's like, I don't know, like, am I really gonna have to fucking shoot people? She's 15, by the way, which I feel like people forget about.
Yeah.
And they just sort of like developed a brother-sister relationship, and she had told him about everything that happened to her and how she used to live, and Sniper was just very upset about it and said that those people are lucky he doesn't go and shoot them right now.
Wow.
I know.
God bless.
God bless.
They don't make drug dealers like that anymore.
They sure don't. And they talked about Sniper's family, but his family seemed like real normal.
Yeah.
And he dropped out of school, things like that. But she said like his parents seemed like they cared about him.
Figured out where the money was at.
Literally, she like, I think she tells him, I might even have it in there, like, you should go back to school. And he's like, why would I ever do that?
Exactly.
Look at my home.
Yep.
For what?
Why am I not selling drugs?
I don't know. So Michelle goes on her first run, and Sniper tells her everything to do. Like, you don't ever give the person the drugs without getting the money first. And if any problem came out, she was supposed to get out of there as fast as possible. And if the situation got really ugly, that's why she had the gun and the beeper. A beeper. I am going to pretend like we don't have any listeners who are young enough to not know what a beeper is, so I'm not going to explain it.
Everyone knows what a beeper is.
I know, but then I saw something that, like, a post that was like, what do you mean burn a CD? And I wanted to die.
No.
So I will not be explaining
not a world I'm living in.
So he takes her basically to an apartment complex with like a courtyard, and she goes in the courtyard and she's supposed to find people who want to buy drugs.
Oh.
Yeah, this is not like she's dropping off drugs.
Oh, okay.
This is like, you need to find a way to sell these drugs in my car.
Damn.
Yeah, not at all what I thought.
Oh. Like cold calling?
Yes.
But with drugs.
Literally.
No.
Like we used to ask.
Sales isn't my thing.
Not at all. Not at all. So she finds this guy who's like already smoking. She said verbatim that he looked like a crackhead. Like,
want to buy some drugs, man?
Yeah, she was like, so like, do you want some more of that tonight? And he was like, we'll take a big bag. Just, I don't know how this worked. Just so random. And she's like, how much can you pay? And he's like, $500. And in her mind, she's like, where the fuck are people getting this money? Yeah. Like, I'm eating cold ravioli off a radiator, and this man out of no...
$500 for drugs?
That
what kind of drugs is this? Do we know?
Weed.
Oh, it's weed?
Yes.
I was thinking, like, crack.
Piles of weed. Wow. No. So she's, like, eating ravioli off a radiator, and this man wasn't even planning on buying $500 worth of drugs.
But it's there, so
yeah, he's like, why not? So she's like, what the fuck? So she goes back to Sniper, and he gives her a big bag of pot, and she tells the guy, like, I'll take the money first, and then he, like, starts freaking out and screaming at her to give him the drugs first, like, no, you give me the drugs first. And this is the first time she's ever done this, so she's freaking out, and she's like...
Shoots him. No, just kidding.
No. No.
This is what I trained for.
She's like, okay, I can't do that. I have to get the money first. Like, very official. Like, no, sir. The policy states you must give me the money.
According to the research and training I have done, for this interaction to go smoothly,
my dad,
I need to acquire the currency
the inventor of toaster strudel. So, no. He's like, give me the drugs. And she's like,
give me the money.
No, I need the money. And he's just screaming. So she just takes off running back to the car, and she's like, I can't get this guy to give me the money. And Sniper's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, he will not do it. So he's like, get in the car, I'll handle it. I don't want you to get hurt.
Oh my god, is it gonna be a cop?
No. So then he comes back minutes later with 5 $100 bills. Just paid up immediately.
What the fuck?
Fuck
you.
He said sometimes you gotta play a little rough. So I'm not sure what he did to this man.
Grabbed him by the fucking shirt and said, listen here, you motherfucker.
You don't treat my employees like that.
I'm gonna call the fucking union on your ass.
The union. She said they did that for the next couple weeks with him and Roderick. Like, they would hang out like a family, and then they would do runs together, and like...
Oh, how nice.
Yeah, Sniper would give them like a portion of the profit, and he let them live at his house for free. And like I want to say they made like $400-500 a week.
Nice.
Yeah.
Not a fucking bad gig.
No, it's more than I make.
Probably cut about even. So, you know.
For only a couple days worth of work.
You're right.
With some moderate risk. I'll take it. However, a few weeks later, Sniper got busted by the cops not too far from their house. And Roderick came running in to get Michelle and told her that they had to leave immediately. So,
oh, no.
I know. So
I was really cheering for them.
I know, right? What's wrong with me? So he tells Michelle they have to leave immediately, so they pack up everything they can and they get out of the house in like 15 minutes. And Michelle just takes them back under the bridge because she's like, I have nowhere else to go. Just right in front of the microphone. So she takes Roderick under the overpass where she lived that she liked.
Welcome to my home.
Yeah. However, Roderick had to get his own garbage can to sleep in because he couldn't sleep with Michelle because it was against his religion. Which was interesting to me.
Well,
and Michelle said that was interesting. Like, you're selling drugs. You can't sleep in the same trash can as me with all our clothes on.
There's just some things, I guess.
Some things. She said they had enough money to probably get an apartment, like a month start at an apartment, but they just kind of wanted to save and see what they could end up with.
Yeah.
However, none of that mattered because not that long after that, Michelle was walking out from underneath the bridge when she saw someone that she recognized, and she went to turn around to leave. They went back to the bridge, packed up all their shit, and her dad was waiting for her to pick her up. And she had to go back home, and she never saw Roderick again.
What?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah.
How did he find her?
That girl saw her, called her dad, and was like, I found Michelle, because she's probably missing.
Yeah.
Because she's 15.
Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Fuck you.
I know. So she had to go home.
Fuck that.
So she had to go back to school, obviously. At this time, she's like 16. And
She has to go, what, back to the 5th grade?
I was going to say, at this time, she was 16, and she was in the 7th grade.
Oh, my God.
I was 16 in the 10th grade.
Literally.
Yep.
Yeah, because I was a 14-year-old freshman.
Yes. So, but she did pass a bunch of tests somehow and ended up being put in ninth grade, which is only a little behind. Like a year behind at this point.
She got them street smarts now.
She's like, I can pass any fucking test.
You don't know where I've been.
So, she went back to her house, and there was now 15 people living at that house.
What the fuck?
Including the guy who would rape her. And she said that picked right back up when she got home.
Hell no.
Yeah. And she said even school was worse this time around because she knew what it was like to have a little bit of freedom. So it was just completely worse being back in this whole environment. So she's a sophomore at school when she meets this guy named Eric, which Eric is not his real name. She doesn't ever use his real name. This is the name she used. She said that she was just sitting alone at lunch one day and he came up to her and was like, you seem a little sad. Is everything okay?
No, Eric.
Yeah, and then he said something like, God always loves you and he'll always be there for you. And she thought it was weird because she had never talked to this guy before, but she said maybe he's just one of those nice religious freaks.
Oh, thank you so much.
Literally.
I feel so much better now.
Until a few days later, she was sitting in the library alone again, reading Stephen King, which was her favorite kind of book to read. And Eric walked by again and started talking to her. And by now she had figured out that Eric was a senior and he was on the football team, so it was just kind of weird that he was talking to her at all. And he was asking her if she liked like Stephen King books, and then she had a poem book, so he asked her about the poems and if she could read him one of the poems she wrote. And she read him a poem that had something at the end of like about wanting to be loved, and Eric asked her why she felt like that. And then over the next few weeks, her and Eric just started cutting class together and hanging out. And she thought he was kind of odd, but he was the only person who was hanging out with her. So why would she not hang out with him?
Right.
And she said, like when she was around him, she just felt pretty. Like even though like to her clothes were terrible and her life was terrible, but she felt different. And she said people obviously stared at them wondering what he was doing with her. And then she said one afternoon when they were out of class together, he told her that he loved her.
Ew, Eric.
Ugh.
That's sick.
And it was the first time anyone had ever kissed her or like told her that they loved her, anything like that.
Yeah.
And then he just kissed her before she could even say anything back. So she had to give Eric her house number because she didn't have a cell phone, obviously.
Yeah.
But in what home can you answer the phone with 15 other people there? And she was busy taking care of those kids all the time, so she could, like, never answer the phone. And he would ask her why she didn't, like, call him back or come to the phone, and she, like, tried to explain, like, I come with a lot of baggage. Like, my home life is terrible. Like, I can't just, like, speak to you on the phone.
Yeah.
And then Eric said that she deserves to be loved, and he wished that he could take her home to live with him, and that, like, she said his parents seemed, like, wonderful.
Yeah.
Like, they bought him all the nicest clothes. They got to eat dinner every day, which is just awful.
Yeah.
And then, on a Friday afternoon, her and Eric ditched class together and, like, made out for the first time.
Oh, God.
And then it went all the way.
Oh, God.
With Eric.
Oh.
She said they did that, like, 3 times, and then a few weeks later, she started to feel nauseous and exhausted.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm. So even though she was terrified because she had no way to take care of a baby, she took a pregnancy test, and it came up positive immediately, like she suspected.
Ugh.
She wanted to tell Eric right away, but it was just kind of complicated, like it wasn't that simple, so she was just waiting. And then, like, after the 4th time they got together, a girl told her, you know Eric has a girlfriend, right?
No.
Yeah, and she was just kind of floored. She was like, that cannot be true. I have no idea what you're talking about. But, it did end up being true. A girl named Cassie called her who went to another high school. And it was like one of those rare times where she answered the phone. And she said, this is Cassie. I found your number on Eric's phone. And she said, like, Michelle was like, who is this? And Cassie said, I don't know if you know this, but Eric and I have been going out for a few months. And then she just hung up the phone. She said this really taught her what heartache felt like someone had pierced her heart with 1,000 pins. And then they had to, like, formally break up. Obviously, she said it was, like, short, sweet, this isn't working out, blah, 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 blah. She, like, didn't let him
Fuck you, Eric. Fucking men.
The worst.
Ugh.
She never told him that she was having a baby because she didn't think he deserved to know.
Oh my god, I'm so sad already.
God, it gets worse.
I know.
Because I guess he had been, like, downplaying their relationship around school. Like, she was never my girlfriend. It was just someone I fooled around with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way he was acting, she could kind of tell, like, that was true to him. Like, she was just some girl. And then she finally told her mom she was pregnant, and she knew her mom wouldn't want her to keep it, but it was her decision, and she never thought of anything else besides keeping it. She said in the 10th grade she ended up dropping out of school just because she didn't want her classmates to see her pregnant or anything like that.
Right.
And they would hardly notice if she was gone anyway. So she just kind of sat around the house and didn't have to do as much housework because she was sick all the time. And she was able to start fighting off the person who was assaulting her at her home at this point. Like, she was just sick of it. And she was able to just, like, kick and shove them, and eventually they would give up sometimes. Then she gave birth to her son, Joey, on October 24th, 1999. She wanted to name him something like Giuliano or something, but her family told her not to pick such an ethnic name.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So she named him Joey. She gave birth an entire month earlier than she was supposed to.
Wow.
And she said at that moment it was like she was given the best gift of all time, and she will always think of his birth as the happiest moment of her entire life. Michelle calls Joey Huggy Bear. That's her nickname for him. So she calls him that, like, all the time. She said he was just the sweetest boy, and he hardly ever cried, and by 2 months he was sleeping through the night. But she wasn't really working, so she didn't have, like, any money. She could barely afford diapers and formula. And also her parents had separated around this time, and her dad moved out, and her mom started dating a man named Carlos, so he moved in. So just rotating people here.
Yeah.
She said she loved celebrating holidays with Joey just because her family never really did celebrate holidays. So in 2001, when Joey was 2, she kind of got really excited for Christmas because he could understand what was going on. And he kept asking for a tree, but she didn't have enough money to get him a tree and get him presents. Like, it was just too much. So she made a tree out of, like, branches and stuff that she found outside and just, like, glued them together. And then she wrapped all of his presents on Christmas Eve to surprise him. And he was just so excited. He loved the tree. He loved his presents. He woke up at, like, 5 in the morning, as kids do on Christmas.
So annoying.
He said, "Thank you. I love you." They watched movies all day, and she felt like she was in such bliss until she realized, like, how little money she had after that.
Yeah.
So in the spring of 2002, Michelle started looking for any type of job because she was so tired of being broke and depending on her Social Security checks, because she was getting Social Security checks at this time.
Right.
Because she was under 18. So she would have her mom watch Joey while she went out to look for any type of job, which was difficult because she didn't have a high school diploma. So that's hard to get a job. And she's not 18. So she was looking for a job in June. Actually, she might be 18 at this time. I might be misspeaking. She might be like 20, 21. Yeah, she had to have, because she gave birth when she was like 18, 2 years later. Okay, yeah. So she is over 18. So, but the high school diploma thing is a big hinder. So she was looking for a job in June. She said she was out like all day. So she gave up and went home early, which is like 4 o'clock in the afternoon to her. Like, she had been looking for jobs for like 7 hours. Nothing. And she went home and she went up to one of the bedrooms on the second floor, and she saw her mother's boyfriend, Carlos. And he was just like wasted. Like, he was slurring his words. And her mom, who was supposed to be there, was nowhere in sight. And so he was like watching Joey. Like, she had Joey.
Oh no.
And she said, like, Carlos just kind of lunged at her, and Joey started screaming because he was so scared. And he was like so scared he started to like pee his pants. And Carlos saw...
Oh no, I don't like this.
And Carlos saw this and grabbed Joey by the right leg and fractured his knee in one motion. Michelle doesn't really go into details about this. She said it's way too painful to relive and describe. So she had to go to the hospital, and she wanted to tell them the truth, but she was terrified that they would take Joey away from her. So she said that Joey had just fallen in the park. But not long after that, not long after she checked him in the hospital, the nurses were kind of like, "We need to talk to you."
Yeah.
And Michelle was like, "You're going to take him away from me, aren't you?" And they didn't answer. They were just like, "We know what happened to Joey. And then she got the devastating news that when Joey was released from the hospital, he would be put into foster care until they determined that his home was a safe place for him to live. And Michelle just kind of lost it. She was sobbing and crying, and it was just, like, really sad to read. It's really sad to retell. Like, awful. Because at this time, Joey was, like, 3, so he knows Michelle. Like, he knows Michelle is his mom, and he sees her every day, and they love each other, and they talk. But Michelle knows that, like, the moments she's spending with him now are, like, the last moment she's going to spend with him for a really long time.
Right.
But he doesn't know that yet.
Oh, my God. My heart.
I know. So, when Joey's ready to be released, the social workers tell her that she needs to say goodbye. And, Joey just starts screaming and begging her not to leave and don't leave him there, and he loves her and he wants to go with her. And, so she had to say goodbye, and they took him away. And she said she's been abused by family members for years. She's lived in a garbage can under a bridge in all types of weather, but nothing prepared her for losing her child. And that is the worst thing that has ever happened to her in her 21 years that she had been alive at that point.
Oh, my God.
It sucks because it wasn't her fault.
Yeah.
It's not like someone did a house check and there was shit everywhere.
Right.
And they're like,
and, like, she was trying. She really was going to try.
Yeah,
and, like,
no. Her mom's drunk boyfriend.
Oh, my fucking God.
Yeah.
That is so sad.
So she had to walk to all of these appointments to try and get Joey back because she had no car. Mm-hmm. She had no money, no support. They were obviously not understanding at all. They would just tell her, like, you know, if you're late, it counts against you, so don't be late.
Right.
And told her what she would need to do to be considered a fit mother. She'd have to show she could provide a safe and secure home. She did have visitation rights, which she would need to show up for on time. And a caseworker would have to be there, and they were scheduled for once every couple weeks. So she moved out of her mom's place and into her cousin Lisa's house, which was small, and she hardly even knew Lisa. But she thought Lisa was kind of cool and sweet. They met a couple years ago, and she was willing to let Michelle stay there for $300 a month. But she knew Michelle didn't have any money, so I'm sure it wasn't. She wasn't collecting.
Right.
She also said her cousin Diana lived within a few blocks. So in June of 2002, she was hanging out with Diana on her porch, and Diana introduced Michelle to one of her friends, Emily Castro. Emily was young like Diana. They were like 14. Mm-hmm. But Michelle said that didn't really bug her because she was so behind in school.
Right.
She was used to hanging out with younger kids. Like Michael.
Right.
He just doesn't mind.
Yeah, it doesn't faze him.
No, used to it. So she said over the next couple weeks they all hung out a lot. And then she said that Emily would talk about her dad a lot, and like her parents weren't together, but she still gets to see her dad. And Michelle thought that was kind of cool because her family was so awful. She was like, sure, your parents aren't together anymore, but like you have a great home life and you get to see them. So she shows Michelle a picture of her dad, and he's like playing the guitar, and she said he looked a little disheveled, but he seemed nice. And like every time she heard Emily talking to him on the phone, he would like do this funny accent and like goof around and like just joke around. Michelle's first visit with Joey was around 4th of July weekend in 2002, and she said he was just so excited to see her. They played at the park while someone was watching, obviously.
Right.
She only got an hour. And when the time was up, he kept asking if he could go with her, and he doesn't want to go back there, and he misses her. Just, you know, the worst shit.
Yeah.
And then in July, she had to miss her second scheduled visit because she had to walk there. And at this point in the foster system, Joey didn't have a permanent family, so he would be shuffled around. So the meeting places could change from, like, her neighborhood to, like, 4 hours away, like, wherever he was, or where the meetings had to be. And she said... And she would try anything. So for her to say she couldn't make it, it had to be super fucking far. Right. She was like, there's no way I can make it to that appointment. Her next scheduled appointment was August 23rd, 2002 at 2:30. This was an appointment like to prepare her for the actual court hearing on August 29th.
Yeah.
So they sent her the address, and she had a ride, so she declined the ride offer from social services. And it wasn't until 11 a.m. that morning that her ride told her that they couldn't take her. And she was pretty sure the address was downtown, so she had to leave, like, immediately when she found out she didn't have a ride to walk there. So she showered, threw on some shorts, started walking. She asked Diana if she wanted to go with her because for whatever reason Diana wasn't at school that day. So Diana was like, sure. So they start walking, and they're walking for like an hour. They have no idea where this building is. MapQuest, GPS, this isn't a thing.
Right.
2002. They're just walking, trying to find this address. And around 1 p.m., she decides she better call social services and tell her, like, I'm lost, I don't know where I'm going. And she said that they were just so nasty and said that Michelle should have taken the ride that was offered to her and, like, hung up on her. So Michelle was like, let's just turn around and go back home. Like, start walking towards home, and we can just ask people on the way back home if they know where it is, and we can turn around from there. So they're walking that way, and she sees a clock, and it's like 1:18. So there's not a whole lot of time left. So she's going to try and call the office again. So she tells Diana, I'm going to look around and see if I can find a payphone, and I'll catch up with you. You just walk home. Like, it's a lost cause at this point. We both don't need to be doing this anymore.
Right.
So she goes into the Dollar Tree, and she asks the cashier if she knows where the address is, and the cashier says no. And then another lady is like, actually, I think if you just go up the corner and take a left, I think that's where that building is. Like, I'm not 100% sure, but it's worth a shot. So Michelle's like, all right, it's time to go because it's almost 2:30 at this point. She has no time to mess around. So she's turning around to leave to go see if that's where it was, and she hears a guy from a few feet away say, I know exactly where that is. And he stepped closer, and she realized it was Emily's dad, Ariel Castro. And she was like, oh, hey, I'm Michelle. I'm Emily's friend. I know your daughter. And he was like, oh, yeah, if you give me a second here, I can show you how to get there. And she was thinking, like, thank God, like, I'll be a little late, but at least I could still make it at this point, especially if someone's going to drive me there.
Yeah.
Because she was going to, like, heel-toe it there. So they finished ringing up Ariel. She gets in the car. She said it did seem a little ratty. It just looked kind of disheveled, but he seemed all right, so she didn't really question it. And then he asked Michelle if she knew where a bank was, and she was like, I think it's over there if you just take it right. And he's like, okay, that's cool, but first I'll help you get to your address. Do you want a ride? And she was like, yes. But then she got this weird feeling in her stomach, and she's like, can we just call Emily first and let her know that you're giving me a ride somewhere? And he said, well, Emily's in school right now. I don't really want to bother her. And Michelle's like, okay, fine. We can just, like, do the ride then. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why I'm acting like this. So then he starts driving towards his house, and she's like, where are we going? And he's like, I just need to stop by my house for a minute to pick up some stuff. Emily will be home from school soon. I have to give her some money. Don't worry about it. I'll take you to your appointment. Like, before all that, I just need to stop home. And then he's like, oh, do you like puppies? My dog just had a puppy. So if you want, I can give you one so that when you get Joey back, you can give him this dog. And Michelle's like, that is so nice. Like, I would love a puppy to give to Joey when he comes home because he would love it so much.
Right.
So then they go to his house.
Oh, my God. This would definitely get me, too.
I know. And she realizes, like, a couple things are off. Like, he pulls into the driveway and he locks the gate behind him. And they're supposed to just be there for a second.
Yeah, and then, like, leaving right after. So
yeah, so she's like, why are you locking the gate? And he said he just doesn't want his car to get stolen. And Michelle was even like, I have no idea who would want to steal this car, but if that's how you feel, that's fine. And then she said, like, everything was just really messy. And then he had an answer for everything. Like, he's very quick. And then he tells her to come inside real quick. And she's like, it's already 3 o'clock. Like, I'm a half hour late to this appointment. And we're like, we just have to get to this appointment. And he's like, if you come inside, you can pick out your own puppy. And she's like, okay, I can come in for like a minute. And just before she stepped inside, she saw an old man from a yard over. And he was like staring at her. So she waved and he waved back. And like the exchange immediately put her at ease. She's like, the neighbors know I'm here. Right. Emily's going to be here soon. She knows I'm going to be here. Yeah. Like, I'm paranoid for no reason. So he tells her to come upstairs and look at the dogs. And she's like, I really don't want to go upstairs. And he's like, it's me. It's Emily's dad. You have nothing to worry about. It's fine. She said she studied his face and he just seemed completely sincere in what he was saying.
Right.
And he was saying things like, I could try and bring the puppies downstairs, but I don't want them running all over the place. And they're probably sleeping.
Yeah. Just like normal things that would make complete sense.
Yes. So she's like, all right. So they're in this, he tells her, like, they're in this room by the dresser. So she walks over to the dresser and she hears the door slam. So she started screaming immediately to let her out. Just get her to appointment, please. Let her go. He put his hand over her mouth and nose and said, I'll kill you if you scream again. And she said to this day, she still cannot believe she went into his house and went upstairs.
Oh, my God.
So she's laying on the floor, and he's screaming at her to not move, and he's coming right back. And she said she tried to scream, but when she opened her mouth, literally no words would come out. Like, she was screaming, and not one thing was coming out. And she said her hand shook like she was caught in an earthquake. Like, she was just full-blown panicking.
It's like a nightmare.
Yes.
This is how I act in my nightmares.
Yes. She's like, she knew she had to do something, but her body physically would not do it.
That's exactly what would happen to me.
Yes. And she said, like, not even a second later, he was back in the room lifting a heavy stool through the door. And he set it up next to her, and he had 2 orange extension cords. And she started to struggle to her feet, and he yelled at her to lay still. He wrapped her up with the extension cords, and then he masturbated over her body when she was laying there. After he finished, he hooked the extension cords up to these poles hanging in the bedroom, so she was suspended off the floor by 12 inches while facing the window, with her arms and her feet tied. And then he stuffed a sock in her mouth and told her, "Don't move, I'm going to go get us some food."
Oh my God.
She said he didn't come back for over a day, so she was suspended from the ceiling for an entire day with a cord around her neck as well. She said she had peed on herself twice because she had to go pee. She said she would pass out from the cord around her neck. And then he came home and forced her to eat. He ripped the tape off of her mouth so hard it ripped her hair out. And then he made her get up and took her to the next room over. And he raped her over and over again for an hour. She said the mattress was soaked with blood and she was just begging him to not hurt her anymore. She said, like, just let me go. I don't think you're a bad person. Like, things are out of hand. But, like, we can be done now. Like, this doesn't have to be what it is. Then she said he just laid down next to her and started talking to her like she was his girlfriend.
Oh my God.
Like, I wish I didn't have to do this to you. My wife left me. I was molested as a child and no one did anything. That's why I started watching porn and I just need someone to stay here with me. Just shit like that. She's like, I don't care.
Yeah, no.
Then he asked how old she was and he took her ID and it said she was 21. He said, I thought you were so much younger. I thought you were a prostitute. And then told her that she's not going to be here for a long time, maybe just until Christmas. So then she starts to panic because it's August.
Oh my God.
She's like, I cannot be here until Christmas because she's trying to get her son back.
Right. What the fuck?
So, and when he said that he thought she was a prostitute, I think she kind of thought like, oh, this is like how you treat prostitutes and then you let them go.
Right.
Like, this is over now.
Yeah.
That was not it. So he gave her shirt and underwear, but not her shorts. So she had to put back on her underwear that are full of blood and pee from when she was suspended over the floor. And then he pulled her up by her hair from the bed and dragged her down into the basement. He put a tie around her hands and then wrapped a chain around her body 5 times, put the chain in her mouth, and then locked them behind her. And then after that, he said he had to make sure nobody could hear her because she had been screaming the whole time. So he slammed a motorcycle helmet on her head and she blacked out from all of it. Mm-hmm. She woke up eventually with no idea what day it was. And she spent hours trying to get out of her hand ties. And she eventually did get her hands free after the tie loosened and she was able to take the motorcycle helmet off. She said she was extremely groggy while trying to do this because there was no air in the helmet.
Right.
So she had been without oxygen for however long she was asleep. And she said it was just such a relief to get the helmet off. And she tried to get the whole thing loose and then was thinking, like, even if by some miracle I get these chains off, there's an alarm on the basement door that she can't get out of. And then while she was, like, doing all of this, Castro came home and started yelling at her that how was he supposed to trust her and now he had to punish her. And she said for 3 hours he did things to her that she can't even talk about. And she did not, like, things she has never done, things she would never do. And all she could do was lay there like she was dead. And she said, in a way, she thinks a part of you has to die to go through something like that.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, he chained her back up and said this is where she is staying until he can trust her. He would come downstairs and give her food and water and say she had to eat or else she would die. Like, he was concerned for her. Like, if you don't eat, you're going to die. Like, you need to just eat the food. She had to memorize his schedule because she was in the dark all day because there's no light in the basement.
Right.
She said she had no idea if it was a weekday, weeknight, weekend, anything like that. So she knew it was a weekday if he went to work. So she could hear him leave the house and the band start. So she's like, must be morning, weekday. Or if he came downstairs in boots, it was usually the evening and he was coming to rape her after work. He also told her that nobody was looking for her. Like, there were no flyers, no posters, nothing on the news. Yeah. And she said that shattered her. And she knew he was probably right. I mean, several people saw her leave with him. If her family had put out posters, surely someone would have recognized her.
Right.
The neighbor saw her.
She was in the
Dollar General. Someone saw her. So she's like, someone would have known where to look by now if there were posters. So there must not be any. She said she spent her days talking to Joey as if he were there. Like, she would make as much noise as possible when she knew he was at work. She prayed all the time. He kept her down in the basement for months. She tried to keep track of the days, and she got to, like, 90, like her 90th day down there. She never got to shower when she was down there. When her period came, he just threw some napkins at her, and she would try to make them into tampons, but it was never enough. So there was dried blood all over her.
Oh, my God. She
said her hair had so much semen in it that it was hard as a rock. She had on the same underwear she was kidnapped in, full of blood and pee still. He brought her upstairs to the room she was taken to first. The poles were gone now, and it was replaced with a mattress and a bucket with a piece of cardboard over it and chains coming out of the wall. So she knew she was going to be there for a while. When she got up there, he raped her and laid next to her and talked about how he was bullied by black people when he was a kid. And just giving her this sob story.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then said he wishes he got to John Bonet first. Yeah. Like, I'm such a victim.
What the fuck?
But I wish I had gotten to John Bonet Ramsey first. And then he said stuff about, like, Elizabeth Smart, who was kidnapped the same year Michelle was. Like, just the worst. He would yell at her if she cried because they were supposed to be a family.
Oh, my
and he didn't want her to cry because she was here because it was supposed to be great. She would try to wiggle out of her chains, but at this point she knew he had a gun, and he said he would shoot her, and she was confident that he would, in fact, shoot her.
Right.
He made her board up all the windows in the house, but he boarded up the windows behind the curtains, so it still looked normal from the outside. Like, the windows were just closed.
Yeah.
He moved her to what she called the blue room. There's, like, a blue room, a pink room, and a white room is where this all kind of happens. So he moved her to the blue room, and after a few weeks, she had started talking to Joey out loud again. And he overheard her and told her stop talking to people who aren't there. And she said, well, if you actually got me a puppy like you said you were going to, I wouldn't have to talk to no one. And a few days later, he brought her a radio and said she could use that so she wasn't bored as long as she didn't listen to any songs by N-words. I would just say black people for the sake of it, but I want to read it as he would say it, just so you can tell how terrible he is. So she wasn't allowed to listen to music by black people. And then a week later, he brought her a puppy. And she said he actually looked happy when he gave it to her, like a dad giving a daughter a gift. Like, he was so excited to give Michelle this puppy. Yeah. So Michelle would take care of this puppy. She potty trained him in a box. And then he would come and take the dog out to go to the bathroom and leave it out there while he raped Michelle every day. Like, just like a daily routine. Except one day he came in drunk and forgot to take the dog outside. So when he started attacking Michelle, it started to go crazy.
Oh, God.
And he snapped its neck.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then one day he said he was going to let her sit on the porch in a disguise. And she said he was just so Jekyll and Hyde that way. Like, you never knew what he was going to do. Like, he killed her dog, and then he's like, I think I might let you go outside today. Like,
oh my fucking God.
But not because he felt bad about stuff. Like, he didn't want to take her outside because he killed her dog. It's just because that's how he felt that day.
Oh my God.
She said she went on the porch in her disguise, and she saw the man outside who saw her go into the house, and she wanted to yell so bad, but she was so scared. And then when they went back inside, he took all of her clothes and said he would give them back to her whenever he wanted to. So she was chained in the winter, completely naked. He did not give her her clothes back for 4 months. She spent 4 months completely naked. She said by February her entire body was blue, and she was, like, begging for socks. Like, I'll take one sock. Like, I'm so
Seriously?
cold. He gave her a tiny piece of cotton fabric, like a blanket, that didn't cover her body. Like, just the tiniest thing. And then in March, he finally gave her a small TV and told her she could use that to entertain herself as long as she didn't watch any shows with N-words in it. This is a reoccurring rule in this home.
Yeah. Fuck this guy.
The worst. And then 8 months after she was taken, she got to take her first shower. She did not get to shower for 8 months.
My God.
Yeah, not showering for 8 months as a normal person in normal circumstances.
Sickening.
Awful.
After constant rape.
These circumstances, she said, like, he looked at her one day and was like, you are fucking gross. Like, you need to take a shower.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, like, it's my doing. I'm the reason I'm fucking gross. So he took her downstairs, and she said she also saw herself for the first time in 8 months. She said her hair was to her shoulders. She had blood and bruises all over. She was pale. Her eyes were bloodshot. She had to ask him for scissors to cut her hair to her ears to even be able to wash it because it was rock solid.
Oh, my God.
Like, she had to just cut it all off.
Yeah.
And anytime they ask for scissors or use them, they are kid scissors. Because he is prepared for anything. He's not about to hand this woman scissors. So she had to cut off all of her rock hard hair with safety scissors.
Oh my God.
And he gave her like 10 minutes. And now we're going to go into Amanda Berry. I don't want to say I'm almost done. I know this is going kind of long, but this is the longest episode I'll have. These notes were really long, but the backstories are important and long. Yeah. So now it's April 21st, 2003. It is the day before Amanda's 17th birthday. Her and her mom live above her sister's husband, and their daughters, like a duplex.
Yeah.
Amanda and her mom are upstairs, and the other family's downstairs. Her sister's husband, Teddy, is her manager at Burger King. So her sister and Teddy were in a huge fight that day, so Amanda considers calling off. She doesn't really want to work, first of all, and second of all, she doesn't want to see Teddy either, for personal reasons. But she doesn't want to have to work tomorrow on her actual birthday to make up the hours. And she was only supposed to work 4 to 8. So she's like, I can work 4 to 8, whatever. I think she had worked there for a little bit. So she's like, I can work in the back drive-thru. Like, she had some type of seniority. She's like, I'll just work the back drive-thru and I won't even have to look at him. Her friends were coming over for her birthday, and she saved up $100, and she was going to get a new outfit and go get her nails done. So she wanted to work that night. So work is slow. She gets off about an hour early. She calls her boyfriend to pick her up, and he doesn't answer. And her mom and her sister are still at work because they work together. So she decides to walk home. She said she never walked home because she didn't want anyone to see her in her Burger King uniform.
Yep.
And it was busier out at night, so she had better chances of running into people she knew in her Burger King uniform. And 2, because her mom didn't like her walking alone at night, but she didn't want to sit at Burger King any longer than she had to. She would have to sit there for like an hour. Yeah. So she starts walking when her sister calls her, and her sister was like, hey, we got out of work early, and asked if she wanted to ride, and she's like, no, I'm already walking, it's fine. And then she walks past a maroon van in the crosswalk with a guy driving and a girl in the front seat. So he calls out and asks if she needs a ride, and she was only like 5 minutes away from home. But she was like, it's nice of him to offer, and he looked familiar, so why not? So she tells her sister she got a ride and hung up. That's when she notices the daughter is gone. So she's now in this car with this man alone. So she asks where his daughter went, and he just changes the subject and starts talking about Burger King. And she starts to relax. She said he seemed like a cooler, older man and was dressed in all black and listening to hip-hop and R&B. And then he says, oh, my son Anthony used to work at Burger King, Anthony Castro. And she's like, oh, that's how I know him. You're Anthony's dad. She knows Anthony. So then she starts to relax. And she's like, oh, yeah, he's a friend of a friend. He's been over at my house before, all of this stuff. And then she's like, oh, how's Angie? And he's like, oh, she's really good. She's at the house if you want to stop and see her. And Amanda's like, why not? Because she doesn't want to be home anyway. She's like, in no hurry to be home. She's like, I haven't seen Angie in forever. Why not? So he tells Amanda that she has a really nice phone, just making small talk. And she's like, oh, yeah, I bought it used off of a girl from work a week ago. So they pull onto Seymour Street where he lives. And she's like, oh, I know exactly where we are. This is only 10 minutes away from my house. And I have family who lives around this neighborhood. So they pull into the driveway at 2207 Seymour Avenue. And they pull to the back of the driveway. And there's this dog going crazy. So Castro was like, hey, let me see your phone. It's really nice. So she gives him her phone, and he's like, wait, hold on, let me chain up the dog so you can get out. So he gets out with her phone. And
oh my God.
He thinks of everything.
Motherfucker.
Because if he was just like, can I have your phone? You'd be like, I'm going to get the fuck out of the car.
Yeah.
But instead he's like, let me see it. He's like, oh, hold on, wait.
It's like something came up real quick while your phone's in my hand.
Yes. Yeah. Awful. She's like, let me chain up the dog so you can get out. So he gets out, chains up the dog, tells Amanda Angie's right inside. So he walks in, unlocks the door. They go inside where he has to unlock a second door, which she thought was odd. Because why do you have 2 locked doors to get into your home? And she follows him inside. The bathroom door was shut, and he's like, oh, Angie must be taking a bath. Let me show you the house while we wait. And she's like, oh, that's nice. He's like, gonna give me a tour of the house while we wait for Angie. But also she said the house was just so messy, like so gross. Yeah. So he's already like halfway up the stairs when he's like, here, I'll show you the upstairs. And she notices it's pretty dark upstairs and they're like closed doors. And he's like, oh, that's just my roommate, and told her to look through the hole where the doorknob would have been because there was no doorknob. And there was a girl sleeping, which she didn't know was Michelle because nobody knew Michelle was missing at this point.
Right.
And it was dark upstairs because they had boarded up all of the windows. So it's like no light upstairs. So then he shows her a bedroom and another bedroom beyond that one, which is how this is set up forever. It sounds like a huge closet inside of a room, like a walk-in closet that he has made into 2 bedrooms. So he shows her the first bedroom. They walk inside. He shows her the bedroom within that bedroom. And then she goes to leave and he's blocking the door. And she starts to panic. And she's like, what are you doing? And he tells her to pull down her pants.
Oh, my God.
And she's full on panicking. She's like, Angie's here. He has a roommate. Like, what does he think he's doing, trying to do this right now? And then he starts screaming at her to pull her pants down. And she said he just looks terrifying now. Like, his whole mannerisms changed. Like, he was a completely different person than he was in the van. And she started to just beat up on herself. Like, how could I be so stupid? Why did I not see this coming? Like, things like that. And then he starts playing with himself, and when he's finished, he says he's going to take her home now. And there's a police car right across the street that he said he would hurt her if she made a sound. So they're walking towards the door, and she's begging him to take her home. And then he stops and tells her to turn around and get on the bed and take her pants off. So now she's screaming that she's going to call the police, and if he doesn't take her home right now, she's screaming help. She's wondering why his roommate isn't coming to help her. She starts running, trying to open any door she can get to, but the knobs are all missing, and all the doors lead to, like, closets. Like, she can't find where she came in from.
Oh, my gosh.
And then he drags her over to the bed and rapes her that same night. And then when he's done, he tells her he's going to take her home now. She knows this isn't true now because he already said that. He takes out duct tape and tapes her ankles and wrists and her mouth, and then he takes a motorcycle helmet and puts it on her head and tells her he's just doing this so he can carry her to the van. And he's talking to her like he's trying to help her. Like, I'm just doing this so we can get you to the van safe, so no one sees, so we're both safe. And then he carries her to the basement and takes a chain. And the chains he's wrapping them up with are like tow because I started to say it and I knew I wasn't going to. Tow truck chains.
So like big fucking chains. Gotcha.
And wraps it around her stomach and padlocks her to a pole in the basement. He tells her to not try and get away and to be quiet, and then he shuts off the light and leaves. She said the basement was very creepy and dirty and it smelled. And she lifts her hands and they're taped, but she could get the tape off with her mouth because I think she had gotten the helmet off by now. So she rips the tape off of her wrists, and then she uses her hands to rip the tape off of her ankles, and then she tries to wiggle out of the chain, but she can't. Like, she even takes her pants off to try and get out. She's like, maybe this is too bulky.
Yeah.
Like, she's trying anything. She said eventually she falls asleep and wakes up to his footsteps coming downstairs. She has no idea how long she's been asleep. There's no light. He tells her he told her not to try and get away, and like a super nice voice, like they're friends. And then he says he brought them breakfast, but they have to shower first. So he unchains her, takes her upstairs, and gets in the shower with her.
Oh, my God.
He washes her hair for her and talking to her all sweet, like getting the tape residue off her face. And he gets her Band-Aids because her fingers are ruined from clawing at the chain. Ugh. And then he gives her some clothes, and they sit in the living room and eat cold Burger King breakfast. And he's talking like this is normal. And she's just sitting there in shock, like, what the fuck is happening? Like, he's acting like they're a family. Like, we're just going to eat breakfast together. And then he tells her it's time to go upstairs. He tells her to relax and lay down. However, she said he just fell asleep and then wakes up and tells her it's time to go downstairs, and he takes her back down and chains her up. And as she's crying in the dark with the TV blaring so no one can hear her, he takes the TV down there and turns the volume all the way up. So, like, if she yells, the neighbors can't hear her yelling.
Yeah.
And that's when she remembers it's her birthday.
Oh, my God.
It's her 17th birthday.
Oh, my God.
So Michelle was watching the news on April 22nd when she saw that a girl named Amanda Berry went missing near Lorraine Avenue, and Michelle knew that was close to where they were when he took her and, like, where they are now. And Michelle actually recognized Amanda from art class. Amanda was much younger than her, but Michelle was so far behind that sometimes they were in the same class. And she said Amanda looked like his type, and that Castro kept talking about kidnapping 2 more people before he would let Michelle leave. So she's like, I bet he took her.
God.
So on April 25th, 2003, he moves Amanda to the upstairs bedroom. It's kind of dark, but not as dark as the basement. Her feet hang off the queen-size mattress because of the way she's chained to the radiator. The chains leave bruises and push into her skin. She complained, and he brought her socks to put between the chain and her body so it doesn't hurt as much. She thinks he did this because she was complaining so much, not at all to be nice.
Right.
The chain isn't long enough to reach the window or the light switch, just long enough to use the bathroom, which is an empty trash can with the cardboard on it that he never empties.
Sick.
He is very careful. When I said that the chain didn't reach the light switch, it's because he didn't want her to flip the light on and off to get the neighbors' attention. And he leaves the radio blaring when he isn't home so that nobody can hear her screaming. And he keeps this weird mannequin by the door so people won't break in.
Oh my God.
And at this point, Amanda doesn't even know his first name. She doesn't know who he is. So she just keeps thinking that she should not have done this. She was having a bad day, and now she's probably going to die because of it. She eats like once a day if she's lucky, and it's always cold McDonald's or Burger King. And she wears all of his clothes, even his underwear. And then after he feeds her, he rapes her. Like he did something for her, now she has to do something for him.
Right.
And after she's been there 4 days, he asks if she wants to watch TV, and she says sure. She doesn't want to spend any more time with him, but she wants out of her chains in her room. So he turns on the news, and Amanda's family is on the news.
Oh, my God.
And they're crying, talking about how she never came home, and nobody knows what happened, and they're praying she's still out there. And Amanda starts crying, too, but she's happy she's on the news because it means people are looking for her, and they know she's missing. And then he flips through the channels to find more news coverage of Amanda, and he tells Amanda, your mom looks really upset. And Amanda said he had such a proud look on his face, like he felt so important for, like, taking Amanda, and it's all over the news. And
how the hell, like, that's just so crazy,
isn't it?
How
I don't know.
Like,
this entire story is mind-boggling to me, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, like, how can someone take you and you just don't get found?
Nope. Amanda had been gone 6 days, and she said he'd raped her at least 25 times. She said it was like 4 to 5 times every day.
Oh my gosh.
Like, he wakes up, drives the kids to school because he is a bus driver for Cleveland Public Schools.
Also terrifying. What the fuck?
Yes. So he drives the bus, comes back, rapes Amanda, goes and drives the bus until lunchtime, comes back and rapes Amanda, and then does it again after work, and then sometimes, like, later that same night. He slobbers all over her. He's obsessed with her breasts, talking about how they belong to him. She's learned that the more it hurts her, the more he likes it, and it's quicker if she doesn't fight it anyway. And she's still always chained to the radiator, so there wasn't any use in fighting at this point. So this is when Amanda asks for something to write on, and he gets her a journal. She just can't write his name in it. And she knows he might read it, so she's really careful at first, like just writing letters to her family about how she misses them.
Yeah.
And she really misses her mom. She takes the pictures of her family she has in her purse and uses an old food box and gum to, like, make a poster. And when Castro's doing those horrible things to her, she just stares at the picture of her mom to get her through it.
Oh my God.
I know. And then on April 28th, 2003, Amanda sees her mom in the news again. Her mom is showing them that all Amanda's clothes are still there, and her box of money is still there, telling the news that Amanda didn't run away because who would run away and leave all their shit here?
Yeah.
Especially a teenager. $100 to a teenager is so much money.
A teenager will take and they're going to take the dumbest shit, too. All the shit I would think I was
my
going to
Abercrombie jeans.
Yes, exactly.
An extra pair of, like, dress sandals.
Just in case. I don't know what I'm going to get into.
Yeah, no.
My nice earrings.
Yeah, because at first they're like, she probably ran away with her boyfriend. She's like, she did not run away. Look at all of this shit. So she watches more news and, like, the weather and how there could be tornadoes, and, like, she honestly would have no idea. Like, the windows are boarded up and the only light she gets comes from her black and white TV that he gave her. And she asks when she can go home, and he tells her that she's so young, she just has to be patient, and just a couple more months, maybe the end of June. And Amanda's like, if he's not lying, it's just 2 more months. Like, I can do that. And then one day he comes into Amanda's room and tells her that he called her mom and told her that him and Amanda are in love and that Amanda is his wife now.
Oh my.
So he used Amanda's phone and told her mom that she was safe and he didn't know when she was going to be home, and that he talked to her sister too. And then he lets Amanda listen to her voicemails of people begging for her to come home. And she asks if she can call her family and let them know she's alive. And he said she could write them as long as she says she ran away. And she says she would never do that. And he says, okay, well, you're not writing a letter. And then he rapes her again. On April 29th, she watches the news, but there isn't anything on there about the phone call, so she's not even sure he did it because he lies so much.
Right.
And then she hears a story about Elizabeth Smart, who was just released last month and was held for 9 months by someone who called her his wife, too. So she's like, if she can last 9 months, so can I.
Ugh.
So Castro now wants to spend the night with Amanda, and he sleeps with her and holds her hand since she's his wife. And Amanda said that he ruined her life and her body. She's filthy. Her toilet is a trash can. She's hungry, cold, and chained up, and now he wants to hold her hand. Like they're friends. Like they're like that.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Amanda gets to take a shower and brush her teeth on April 30th. She enjoys her shower until he steps in with her. And she said she considers killing herself, but she knows that he wins if she does that.
Right.
And she has to stay alive for her family's sake, so she just decides, like, hope is her only option. So she tries to look on the bright side every day. So in her journal, she wrote, like, I got to feel hot water today. Like, that's a great day. And May is a new month. And there are TV shows that teach you how to do everything, like cooking. Like, she's watching all these shows, and she talks to the picture of her mom and prays to God. And every day is one day closer to her being home. Ugh. On May 1st, 2003, he asks Amanda if she wants to do the laundry. And she says sure, just to get out of the chains. They get in the hallway, and he says, we have to clean this room first, where he said his roommate was. And Amanda did say she considered yelling to this girl frequently, but Castro would pretend to leave just to see if she would pull something like that, so she never really knew if it was safe to do at that time. And this is when she notices that the door is locked from the outside, so now she knows it's another prisoner.
Oh my God.
She said the girl looked tiny and older than Amanda, and in a daze. She really didn't have an expression on her face. He tells Amanda this is his roommate, and they say hi, and then Amanda cleans up all the fast food off her floor, and then she goes downstairs to do his laundry, and she asks if she could have the picture of Jesus that's down there, and he says yes, and she hangs it up next to the picture of her mom. In Michelle's book, at this time, she says that she remembers him introducing Amanda to her as his brother's girlfriend, which she immediately knew was not true.
Right.
So then Amanda decides to write in her diary every time he rapes her by writing like 3X or however many times in the corner of the page so he doesn't know what it means. So that day was 3 times. The next day was 4 times. And she sees there is now a reward for her return, and she hopes that somebody saw her get in the van and will remember something now that there's like a monetary reward on the line.
Right.
Like maybe this will jog someone's memory.
Like everyone? Like, there's so many people around. I don't get it.
Yeah. On May 5th, Castro has to watch his grandson while Angie goes to the hospital. Amanda wishes that the kids were just a little older, so maybe he would accidentally say something about someone being chained up at his grandpa's house.
Right, what the fuck?
She hears Angie come back and is too scared to scream, and Castro is so clever he could probably talk his way out of it anyway, and then he would probably just kill Amanda, so she was like, no thanks. On May 6th, she gets to brush her teeth and listen to her voicemails again, and then he rapes her 4 times.
Oh my God.
On May 11th, he lets her read an article about her. It's Mother's Day, and her mother says she's leaving her room the exact same for when she comes home. Amanda is crying, and it turns him on to see how upset she is, and he rapes her 4 times. On May 13th, he rapes her 5 times. On May 15th, the news announces they investigated Amanda's boyfriend, and Castro is very pleased that the cops are focusing on the wrong person. On May 16th, she gets leftovers from his mom's house. On May 21st, she hasn't gotten her period yet, and she's nervous.
Oh, no.
She's been here a month, and she's so lonely. She hasn't gotten to see the other girl since she cleaned that room, and she feels dead inside, but he hasn't attacked her in 2 days that day. So, this next section starts from the beginning of when Amanda went missing, but from the outsider's perspective, like her family and things like that. So, Amanda's mom, Luana, knew Amanda was never late. So when Luana and Beth got home from work, Beth is her sister, they were surprised that Amanda wasn't home already. So they started checking stuff out right away. After Amanda goes home, she showers and changes out of her uniform, and the shower was dry and her uniform wasn't there. So then they call her and she doesn't pick up the phone, which is also not normal for her. Nobody picks up their phone these days, but back in the early 2000s, you always picked up your phone. You have nothing to do. A phone call is amazing.
You didn't text.
No, you can't text. You're just picking up your phone all the time.
Yeah.
So she didn't pick up her phone. Not normal. So they started calling her friends to see if she was with one of them, and her friends say they haven't heard from her either, so they start driving around to look for her, because it's totally dark now. And a little after 9, Luana calls 911, but the police didn't seem too concerned. She hadn't been missing long, and she'd probably come home soon. When Amanda wasn't home by midnight, Luana called the police again, and this time they sent 2 officers over to the house a little before 1 a.m. They took down her description of 5'1", 120 pounds, blonde hair, and then told Luana again that Amanda would probably be home soon, and teenagers run away all the time.
I don't know. I was a teenager, and I don't know anyone that ran away.
Never. This is not as normal as they're making it out to be. And then, like, Luana just loses it. She's like, okay, well, she didn't run away in her Burger King uniform on her birthday.
Yeah, what the fuck?
With all of her money here.
Yeah. Where's she running to?
Yeah, no. So, like, someone must have taken her. Like, you need to do something. And, like, Luana wasn't this calm and cool, collected parent like you see on TV. Like, they said this statement was laced with profanities directed at them.
Like, listen here, you stupid motherfuckers. My kid didn't fucking run away to your fucking job.
Yes. She said Amanda had never run away before, and she has no reason to run away now. Beth and Luana immediately thought that they weren't taking Amanda's case seriously. They stayed up all night calling Amanda's friends. They made flyers. They put Luana's personal phone number on them because she didn't trust the police to listen to every tip. They spent the next day handing out these flyers. She called TV stations begging them to run a story, but they wouldn't do it because Amanda wasn't a designated missing person yet. So Amanda's mom grew up just over the highway from Seymour Avenue, and she also didn't have a great life. She dropped out of school in the 7th grade when she met Amanda's dad, who was originally from Tennessee. He was wild, had a temper. Luana got pregnant with Beth at 16 and raised her with no help from Johnny Ray Berry, who dropped out in the 9th grade and now spent his evenings partying and drinking. Luana said there were good times, like when Johnny had a job and Luana would make him coffee and he'd eat breakfast with Amanda, but there were just like way more bad days, and Ray was always getting into bar fights and going to jail, and he would beat Luana when they were drunk, and Luana had to work a bunch of minimum wage jobs just to provide for the family since Johnny spent most of his money on alcohol, and Luana would have to get their clothes from thrift stores and use layaway for Christmas. She tried her best to steer her daughters on the right path, despite Johnny Ray giving Amanda a joint for her 13th birthday.
I mean, there's worse things he could have done.
But to give it to her, 13? That's tiny. I'm trying to think of what grade. Like 7th grade. Oh.
I'm trying to think of the first time I smoked weed. I don't know. About then, I guess.
Okay, fine. Maybe that wasn't as crazy as I thought.
Grow up, Madison.
I can't. I never will. So not long after that, Amanda got on the house phone and heard her dad talking to another girl and figured out he was having an affair. So she told her mom, and her mom had enough, and so she, like, confronted him, and then he moved to Tennessee with his girlfriend 2 weeks later. I was like,
oh my God.
You know what? You're right. I do have a girlfriend, and I'm not doing this shit with you no more. Goodbye.
Oh my God.
Yeah, things were better when he left, but Amanda and her mom fought like regular teenage fights, like loud music, going to bed, things like that. Amanda was determined to have a better life. She was in gifted classes in the 3rd grade. She dropped out of high school in the 11th grade because of all the drama and fights, and she enrolled herself in a public school program that allowed her to do schoolwork from home and send it in to be graded, that she used her Burger King checks to pay for. because you had to
Wow.
pay
Yeah.
to get your papers graded. So she decided to do that instead of stay at school. Which, who cares how you finish school if you finish school? She got a 100% on her first psychology test and was kidnapped 9 days later.
Oh my God.
Detective Rich Russell had been a police officer for 16 years and handled hundreds of missing child cases, and 99% of the time it turns out to be nothing. His secretary had told him that Luana had called again about her daughter who went missing the previous day, so he got out the file to look at the notes and see if she was a habitual offender. He was reading the notes, and he said it was her birthday, she left a ton of cash at home, and it just didn't feel like the cases he was used to dealing with.
Right.
So he went over to the house with his partner, Laura Parker, to check in with Luana, and they were greeted with cigarette smoke and profanity.
Yeah. She's spiraling at this
Yes.
point, so.
She did soften up when she realized they wanted to help her. They asked questions like who she might have been with, who was she fighting with, was anyone mad at her?
I'm just making all sorts of fucking noise, sorry.
It's okay. And that's when Luana brings up Amanda's boyfriend, DJ. She never liked DJ.
DJ! It's from House Money.
Oh.
Or it might be TJ, but.
It's like, why'd you say it like that? So
Can't
Amanda's
help it.
mom didn't like DJ at all. He would, like, never come inside when he picked up Amanda. Like, come to the door, greet her, nothing like that. Luana had already talked to DJ after almost banging his door off the hinges when he told her through the crack of the door that he didn't know where Amanda was. Russell and Parker went to talk to DJ after that, where they were met with the same disrespect, but did get to search his room and didn't come up with much of anything. But they did think he was bad news. Like, we might not have found something now, but something is here.
Right.
They then went to Amanda's job, where they learned a 35-year-old Mexican man named Axel frequently went through the drive-thru when Amanda was working and was obsessed with her. So they were feeling comfortable about these leads.
Yeah.
3 days after Amanda went missing, they went to talk to Axel, but he was out of town. They then started...
Axel. Just sounds like trouble.
Axel. They then started interviewing people in Amanda's neighborhood when someone said they were waiting for the bus by Burger King and they thought they saw Amanda get into a white car with 2 or 3 other men. However, he was also a heroin addict, which made him an unreliable witness. But DJ drove a white car, so they were like, you might not... like, maybe you did see a little bit of something. So Russell and Parker's boss, Brian Heffernan, decided it was time to really press into DJ, and Heffernan had 3 daughters, so this really hit him personally. DJ's stories were inconsistent. He swears he was fixing motorcycles the day Amanda went missing, and that Amanda had called him at 11 p.m., which is not true because she was kidnapped around 8 p.m., and that's when she called him for a ride. They found out DJ was driving without a valid license, so they pulled him over and towed his car and were able to search it with cadaver dogs, but came up with nothing. They did run a luminol test. They came up back with, like, chicken blood from groceries. Like,
Ugh.
They found a receipt that DJ had washed his car the day after Amanda went missing at a car wash place with huge woods behind it. So they searched the entire woods, came up with nothing. Obviously, this part is so frustrating because it seems like this could be something, but we know it's not.
Right.
They got DJ's friend to wear a hidden microphone and asked DJ what he thinks happened to his girlfriend, and DJ said he didn't know and he didn't care.
Okay, fuck you then.
I know, poor
Dick.
Amanda is alive.
Yeah.
Don't
and
know,
now she's gonna come
don't
out of this
care.
and hear this?
Yeah.
You don't give a fuck?
He said he hated the police, so the police hated him, and they brought him in for a lie detector test, and he passed. Beth said Luana was generally unhealthy, but this really pushed her over the edge. She never slept, ever. She was heavily drinking now. She hung up a poster of Amanda in the living room and put a butterfly on it and kissed it every day. As they were watching the news coverage of Amanda's kidnapping, the phone rang and Luana ran to answer it, and there was a man on the other end saying that he had Mandy and they were married.
Oh my God.
And that she wanted to stay with him, but he would have her home in a few weeks. Luana begged her to drop Amanda off anywhere, somewhere, let her come home. They would go get her, but he hung up on her. They thought it was weird that he called her Mandy because that's what her friends called her. And then the phone rang again, and it was the same man and said, "Don't worry, she's safe, she'll be home," and then hung up again. They called the police and were able to confirm the calls came from Amanda's phone, but urged Luana to remember that this only proves that Amanda was kidnapped, not that she's still alive.
Why can you not, like, ping phones back then?
They were able to search Axel's house and came up with nothing. Obviously, he's not involved at all.
Yeah.
But even though he had been going to Burger King for months, he stopped going once Amanda went missing. So that looked odd.
Yeah.
Well, he probably went because he was obsessed with her. But they took it as, you're not coming here anymore because you have her.
Yeah.
Several people said they saw Amanda working as a sex worker along Cleveland's infamous Broadway Avenue corridor. They went there and showed Amanda's picture, and some of the girls said that there was a girl who just started working that called herself Amanda and looked like that. 9 days later, they finally saw this girl, and they pulled up and told that girl to get her ass in the car. And then they realized it was not Amanda Berry, just a girl who looked exactly like her.
Ugh. Oh my God.
They rolled up like, get your ass in this car.
Like, God damn it. Don't you know we've been looking for you?
Yeah, not her. After they realized Amanda wasn't working along the highway, after 10 days, they decided to bring in the FBI. Police help with missing children cases all the time, but the FBI is for cases where you know they were kidnapped.
Yeah.
So Heffernan called Tim Kalanick in the FBI's big Cleveland office on the shores of Lake Erie. So Heffernan and Kalanick drove together to Amanda's house, where Amanda's mom showed them Amanda's room, where Kalanick could see 25 pairs of jeans hung up neatly, a box full of cash, all of her shoes lined up, heard about her birthday party plans, the strange phone call. And from everything he could see, he was certain Amanda did not run away, and he also knew the longer she was missing, the less likely she was to come back alive.
Right.
So the first thing that they did was start tracking Amanda's phone, hoping it would turn on again so they could trace it. They were able to determine it had turned on repeatedly the night she went missing, and the next day someone was checking her voicemails. They were able to determine the general area the phone call to Luana was made, but the signal jumped around, so they thought the person was probably driving. And even though they had a general area, they could be anywhere right now if they were driving at that time. However, they camped out in a parking lot of a Family Dollar near that area. That way, if the phone was turned on for even a minute, they could get to that location, not knowing they were only minutes away from the house that Amanda was currently in, and were in the same parking lot that Michelle Knight was kidnapped from.
Oh my God.
I know. They continued the stakeout for 8 days, and Amanda's phone never turned on.
That
They're
reminds
so
me of
close.
JC Dugard.
So
like, they were
close.
right there.
Yeah. There was also a girl, Samantha Farnsley, who lived in the area, who looked just like Amanda, like so much that she was stopped all the time.
Yeah.
The police stopped her like 9 separate times. The FBI gave her a letter to carry that certified she was not Amanda Berry. Like,
that's crazy.
I have this letter. Please leave me alone. Samantha left Cleveland, but not before she got arrested on a small charge. And the police asked Luana to come to the station to look and see if it was Amanda. And Samantha was facing backwards when Luana got there, and Luana really thought it was Amanda until she turned around and realized it was Amanda.
That's so sad.
Awful. On June 3rd, Amanda says that he hasn't fed her in 2 days, and that he won't spend much money on food, but he'll get her cigarettes and weed.
Nice. Priorities.
She said the weed dulls down the pain of being there, and if it wasn't for the weed, she probably would have killed herself by now. She said she didn't really smoke before she got kidnapped, but it helps take her to a different place. When he finally brings her food that day, she saves the napkin to write in because her journal is getting full. She also asks him if he's going to take her home at the end of June, and he said he doesn't know, maybe next year. And then she starts crying and says she needs to see her family, and he says that she needs to stop complaining because soldiers don't see their families for years, and they don't cry like babies about it.
Correct, but they also choose to do that.
Correct.
So.
Yeah. And Amanda said she just saw a TV story about a soldier from Cleveland who wouldn't be home for Christmas, so if that soldier can do it, then she can do it, and that God wouldn't give her something she couldn't handle.
Oh my.
Amanda says that Castro hates sleeping with a fan on, but without it, Amanda feels like she's suffocating. So he was sleeping with her, and she was begging him to turn the fan on, and she was just like making all this fucking noise until he got up to do it. And then he smacked her really hard in the arm and told her to stop being a baby, and then got on top of her, and she couldn't hide her tears anymore. She doesn't like to let him see her cry and give him the satisfaction, but she just couldn't help it.
Yeah.
And then he tells her that she's been acting really strange lately and she better stop, and tells her to stop crying so much. It's only going to make you look old, and you're prettier when you laugh.
Oh, because I have so much to laugh about right now.
This fucker. I have like 5 pages left, guys. Don't worry. This is the longest one by far. On June 23rd, Amanda says she watched an episode of Ricky Lake about survivors of sexual...
Ricky Lake. Oh my God.
If anything,
2000s.
If anything will set you in the timeline, it's that. So she's watching an episode of Ricky Lake about survivors of sexual assault, and when she gets out, she hopes she won't be scared of men for the rest of her life, but she's afraid she will be, and that she wonders if she can ever bounce back from this, and she fights thoughts of killing herself. She just can't think that she'll be here forever, because what would be the point of waking up every morning? She has to believe that she will make it out of here alive one day. The next day she hears another girl's voice and is trying to figure out who it is. He came into her room a few hours later and said he picked up a 14 or 15-year-old girl who was walking to the public pool and asked her if she wanted to get high, and then brought her over, and he was going to kidnap her, but someone saw him bring her inside, so they just smoked weed and had sex and said that she was into it, and then dropped her back off.
I fucking doubt it.
Yeah, I don't think that's true at all. She says she hears him talk on the phone to, like, his family, and he seems so normal. Like, people probably think he's this normal, ordinary guy. He drives a school bus. He gives his daughters money when they ask for it. And he has 2 women chained up inside of his home.
Oh, my God.
Isn't that terrifying?
Yes.
She said she saw another news story about a soldier not coming home for Christmas, and if she can make it 2 more months, she can make it another 6 months. In August, she wakes up to him coming to rape her again. She says it's still 3 or 4 times a day. She said it's her strategy to just not fight it anymore and not make him mad and just do whatever she has to do to stay alive and make it home. But she said he's been doing really, really nasty things to her and that it hurts so bad, so she just screamed either to let her go home or to kill her. So he asked if she wanted to die, and she said no, but I don't want to be here. At least if I was dead, I could see my family in heaven. So he looks at her and says okay, and goes and gets a vacuum and starts strangling her with the cord. And she said she feels fine with it. And then he stops and says that he doesn't want to kill her. It's not about killing her. It's about his sexual problem. In January, it's been 9 months since Amanda was kidnapped. She says he makes her say she loves him and how much she wants him, or else he's rougher on her. She says she stopped writing the X's in her journal because when she looks back, she remembers every time. And it's more than she can bear right now. He says that she belongs to him and this and that they're together, and he's just completely delusional. She keeps thinking about the day she was taken and if it really could have been avoided, if she wouldn't have done this or done that, could it have been different? She asks when she can go home again, and he says, I don't know, you have to be patient, maybe after 3 years.
Oh my God.
I know. And
like, he started out saying a few weeks.
Yeah, and he's like, just a couple years. Awful. So then she loses it, and she says she can't live through this for 3 years, and she will definitely kill herself before then. And she refuses to believe he's telling the truth, and she has all her stuff in a box. So if on a whim he's like, okay, let's go, she's got all her shit. She's gonna waste no time getting ready. On January 26th, the cops come knocking at Castro's door because Castro was driving a midday shift on the bus and was supposed to pick up 2 children for the ADHD program and drop them off. Only one of the kids got off, and Castro drove around all day with a 4-year-old on his bus. He knew the 4-year-old was there when he went to get lunch, and he told the little boy, lay down, bitch, and went inside to eat. Then he read the newspaper, and then he drove the kid to school. But school was over by the time he took this kid to school. So the school made him take the kid home, which I don't know why they wouldn't have been like, give us the kid.
Like, intervene.
Yes. Nope, they were like, take him home, school's over. So the kid's mother called the police, but Castro wasn't home when the police came, and Amanda never heard them knock because of the radio. And a month later, Castro was questioned about it and maintained he didn't curse at the kid, and he didn't know the kid was there until he got back to the bus headquarters, and he forgot to check because he was still mourning his father's death. No criminal charges were pursued, and he was suspended for 60 days without pay. Michelle says not long after Amanda got there, she started to feel really sick, and her breasts were really sore, so she knew she was pregnant. She said he didn't figure it out at first, and she said in her current state of mind, at that time she wanted to have a baby because she missed Joey so much. She said in the weeks after he brought Amanda there, he was coming to her room a lot more, saying that Amanda didn't want to do it, so she would have to do it, which we know isn't true. So this man is raping these girls like 6 times a day. Like, he's having sex like 7 times a day. And Michelle said she hated it, but she thought at least Amanda is, like, fending him off.
Yeah.
Like, at least one of us is not getting this.
Right.
Which wasn't true anyway. She said one day he was biting her boobs really hard, and some milk came out, and he freaked out and called her a slut and said there was no way she was...
Yeah. Okay.
With all the dudes she's doing.
Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm. He said there was no way she was having a baby in this house. He starved her. He would come in to rape her every day and not feed her. And then after a few weeks, he came and hit her in the stomach with a barbell. She had blood rushing between her legs, and he told her that it better be gone by tomorrow. That night, she felt the miscarriage happen, and he came in and slapped her for aborting his baby.
Oh my God.
A psychopath. Deranged, unhinged, unwell, all of it.
Oh my fucking God.
Okay, so I'm going to get into Ariel's past a little bit. He was born in Puerto Rico. His father moved to Cleveland in 1960. His father, Nona, followed a lot of other Puerto Ricans after World War II. There weren't many jobs in Yauco, and Cleveland had a lot of jobs from the railroad and the steel mills. So Nona and his brothers moved to the west side of Cleveland and opened a few businesses. Before that, Nona had started a family with a woman named Lillian Rodriguez in Puerto Rico. They had 3 children in 3 years, Ariel being number 3rd, born on July 10th, 1960, which is my mom's birthday.
I was going to say, what the fuck?
And Jen's.
Yeah.
About a year later, Lillian got pregnant with her 4th child when Nona left her for Gladys, who was also pregnant with his child.
Goddamn.
Yeah, this is when Nona moved to Cleveland alone until he made enough money to move Gladys to Cleveland. When Ariel was 4, his mother moved to Pennsylvania alone and left the kids with her mother so that she could get established. She returned for the children when Ariel was about 6, so 2 years later, to take them all back to Pennsylvania now that she was established. However, the 2 years Ariel was living at his grandmother's, he says he was sexually abused by a boy about 5 years older than him at the time. Ariel talks about this frequently. It's in a suicide letter he wrote in case he got caught. He tells it to the FBI. It was unable to be verified. It was 50 years ago in another country, so we really don't know the validity of that.
Yeah.
When Ariel was 12, his mother moved them from Pennsylvania to Cleveland so that the children could be closer to their father. Ariel had no relationship with his father at this point, and he said his mother was awful and she was abusive. But then he goes on to talk about how great she was, so I don't
knows?
Yeah, I don't know. When Ariel was in junior high, he was suspended for touching a girl's breast. When talking to the FBI later in life, they asked if he had ever sexually abused anyone. He said that he had a girlfriend in junior high that would let him go under her shirt, and that he wanted to go farther, but she would say no, and he would try to force her, and he guesses that was an early indication that he wanted to be in control. Just completely self-diagnosing him. Like, this is probably what... Like, shut the fuck up. He was openly prejudiced against African Americans, calling them names that don't need to be repeated. Mm-hmm. On one day, he shot a black kid from his neighborhood with a BB gun, but claimed it was an accident, but nobody believed him.
What a motherfucker.
Yeah. He graduated in 1979, and a year later met a woman who would essentially become his first prisoner. He noticed a pretty girl who moved across the street from him named Nilda, who was from Yauco, the same town he was. He took her on a date, spending hours parked by Lake Erie, and when they got home really late at night, Nilda's mother was furious and told Ariel that he was responsible for Nilda now and you have to take her with you. So Nilda moved across the street into Ariel's home. They had their first son, Ariel Anthony Castro, in 1981. At first, everyone thought he was cool, like he played bass, he had a car, he would drive Nilda's siblings around, but sometimes he scared the neighborhood kids with his mannequin, with like a woman torso with dark hair that he kept in his passenger seat when he was driving around.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Castro also became possessive of Nilda, forcing her to wear long skirts and forbidding her from wearing V-necks or anything else revealing. He began buying all her clothes at the thrift store. When he came home late from work one night, Nilda asked where he had been and why he leaves her alone all day with the baby, and he told her not to worry about what he does, and he slapped her really hard. When Nilda's sister, Alida, came to visit, she walked in on Castro, shoving Nilda in a cardboard box and telling her she wasn't getting out until he wanted her to. So Alida, who was 12, ran to her mother, who went over to ask what was going on, and he said nothing. They were just messing around. And everyone was kind of concerned about his behavior at this point, but didn't know what to do about it.
Right.
After their second child was born, they were living in a duplex, and when Ariel would leave, he would deadbolt the outside door and take the keys so she couldn't leave. For her safety, he would say that's why he was locking the door from the outside. One time he left the door unlocked, so Nilda went to the grocery store, and when she got back and was walking up the stairs with all her groceries, he pushed the mannequin into her, and she fell backwards down the stairs and smashed her head and had to get emergency surgery.
Oh my God.
She told her sister that she knew he did it on purpose. He then began beating her regularly. He ended up breaking her arm, ribs, and after that, Nilda's family went over and beat the shit out of him. They warned him if he ever touched Nilda again, they would kill him. Ariel never apologized, and then later Nilda's father's garage burned down, so they assumed it was him. In 1989, Castro went out with his brother, and when she asked where he was going, he slapped her and slammed her head into the wall several times. She ran to the neighbors to call the police and told the police she had been abused several times before by him, and they advised her to file a formal complaint, but Ariel said he would kill her or take the kids if she ever said anything and promised he wouldn't do it again, so she never filed the complaint. Nilda said that there were some good times between the rage that he was a good father, and in 1992 they moved to Seymour Avenue after he bought the house from his uncle. But then he would occasionally beat Anthony, and he would force Nilda to have sex when she didn't want to and when the children could hear them. He started nailing the windows shut, and he would listen in on everyone's phone calls. He kept telling Nilda that he would kill her if she took the kids, and in 1993, after not feeling right from the fall on the stairs a couple years ago, she went to the Cleveland Clinic, and they found a tumor that was caused by brain trauma.
So her
yes,
down the stairs.
Yes, and it didn't look good, and she told her sister that Ariel definitely gave her this tumor. A month after her surgery, on the day after Christmas, Ariel got drunk and started hitting her again and left the house. She called 911 and said that Castro beat her, and the police were searching the neighborhood. When Castro returned and demanded that Nilda open the door, Angie, his daughter, was screaming to let her dad in because she didn't understand what was happening. So Nilda unlocked the door, and he started beating her again until she fell to the floor, and then he began stomping her head with his boot. Anthony ran out of the door, and Castro followed him, and the police were able to catch Castro and arrest him. Nilda made a police statement the next day. The felony could have put Ariel in jail, but in 1994, a grand jury chose not to indict him because Nilda didn't testify.
Oh my God.
Nilda did not testify because Ariel was waiting for her outside the courthouse and offered her money in a car to stay silent, and then told her she was a bitch and he would kill her. And he turned around and walked away from the courthouse confident that he would kill her. And she thought that he definitely would, so she was like, not gonna do that. Nilda first met Fernando Colon in 1995. I'm certain it's not pronounced Colon. Colon. I don't know. When she met him when she went to the hospital, he was a security guard with a broken nose and missing teeth and a bruised face. He said he saw her several times at the hospital. She eventually confided in him that Ariel was beating her and that she was suffering constant seizures and losing her vision.
Oh my gosh.
They kept in touch, and he offered to help her if she left. In 1996, Fernando drove over and picked her and the kids up and drove her away. Angie insisted on staying with her father. Castro was pissed, yelling that Fernando took his wife and he was in the wrong, and he followed his daughters to see where they were living. And in 1996, Nilda applied for full custody and was awarded it.
Thank God.
In 2000, he started dating 20-year-old Lillian Roldan. Castro was 40 in 2000. She found him charming and funny. They lived at his house, and it seemed normal, except the padlocked basement. In 2002, Castro sent her a letter saying he loved her, but not enough, and the relationship was over. Later, Castro admitted that he had to break up with Lillian after he kidnapped Michelle because it was just too much to juggle. He had a girlfriend. Why would he kidnap Michelle? I don't fucking know. Okay, so 2004 now. This is the last of this episode. So Gina gets up at 6:30 in the morning on April 2nd, 2004, which is this week.
Oh, damn.
She lives in a house with 7 other people. So her parents, Nancy Ruiz and Felix Dejesus, her brother Ricky, her sister Mayra, and then Mayra's daughters Tatiana and Nancy, and Gina, with 1 bathroom.
I just love the name Tatiana.
Do you?
I used to.
There's like a drag queen. Her name's Tatiana.
Love it.
So her mom stays home and takes care of all of them, and her dad works in a factory, and they're also from Puerto Rico, like around the same area. Gina talks about how she was very shy. If there were parties going on at her house, she would go upstairs with the kids, and she would have trouble making eye contact with strangers, things like that. It was cold that day, so her dad went out and started the car before he took her to school. They had an old white Nissan Sentra that they bought for $500 from her friend Arlene's dad, Ariel Castro. She said it was junky, but they were lucky to have a car, so she didn't really care.
Yeah.
She walked out the door and told her mom bye and that she loved her, and then her mom said she loves her too and she'll see her after school. She also lived in a not-so-nice neighborhood. There was, like, a lot of crime, a lot of homeless people sleeping by the railroad tracks. They moved to this house to get out of an apartment they were in, so it wasn't ideal, but it was better than an apartment with 7 people. Mm-hmm. Gina got to school early that day because her dad had to drop her off before he went to work. She went to a special school with special ed classes since the 1st grade. One of her teachers said she was a slow learner, so her dad drives her to school because this was when short buses were a thing.
Like IEP classes
yes.
type thing?
Completely normal things now, but
yeah,
back then a short school bus would pick you up, and everyone knew that you were in these classes. So her dad would drive her so that she didn't have to ride that bus. So if her dad couldn't pick her up, she would just walk home, or she would walk to school. Her mom didn't really like that much. And a few days before she was kidnapped, her teacher told her that she was doing really well and she could possibly move into regular classes that year, and she would probably have no problem getting into college. So Gina had like a set amount of money she would take to school every day to use for snacks or the bus. So on this particular day, she spent her money on snacks, so she didn't have enough money for the bus. So that just meant she had to walk home. But it was only 2 miles, and she didn't really care. She's like, I don't mind walking 2 miles.
I wanted chips.
Yes. She got like Funyuns.
That's exactly
She's
what
like,
would happen to me.
Can't take the bus. So on her way out of school, she runs into her friend Arlene Castro. And she asked Arlene if she wanted to go ice skating because Gina really loved to ice skate. But then Gina forgot that she was actually grounded because she got caught smoking cigarettes in her room. So she hasn't been allowed out.
To be like that sometimes. Been there, Gina.
So she's like, wait, I think I can still have friends come over my house. Because you're not going to be smoking cigarettes in front of your parents after you just got caught smoking cigarettes.
Exactly.
So she called her mom, and they weren't allowed to hang out. So they just kind of parted ways, and she said she would call her later. She only made it a few blocks when a guy in a Jeep Grand Cherokee pulled up and rolled down his window and was talking to her. And it took her a minute to realize it, but it was Arlene's dad, Ariel, who drives, like, the school bus. And her parents have hung out with them a few times at Christmas choir concerts, things like that. So he asked Gina if she's seen Arlene, and she was like, yeah, she just went that way. And he asked Gina if he would help her find her, and then Gina tells him that, like, she cannot be that far away. Like, I'm telling you, she's right over there. But he was, like, insistent, and so she just got in the car and told him to turn around because that's the direction Arlene was going in. But he kept driving straight, and when she asked him where he was going, he said he needs to just grab something from his house really quick. And she said it felt a little weird, but she told herself to calm down because it was
Arlene. Like your friend's dad.
Yeah, Arlene's dad. Like, her best friend Arlene, this is Arlene's dad. Her parents...
Not that big of a deal.
Yeah, like, if something happens, her parents know him. It's, like, not a big deal. So, he mostly talked about Arlene and his other kids in the car, and they turned on to Seymour Avenue, which is the same street that Gina's aunt lives on, just a couple blocks down, so she's very familiar with the neighborhood.
Yeah.
A lot of people from Puerto Rico live in this neighborhood, which is how it is here, too. You have your different Polish town. Like, people stick together. So she, like, was very familiar with the area. So he pulls into the driveway and stops behind his house and said he was getting money and he'll be right back. And then he comes back out and tells Gina that he has a speaker he wants to put in his car. Can she help him move it? And she's like, why not? So she walks over to the back door and stepped inside the house. So she gets in the house and she says it's just disgusting, as everyone else has so far. He tells her to sit there for a few minutes, take off her coat, and get comfortable. And then he's in the bathroom and the door's open and she can see him, like, trimming his eyebrows. Like, just getting ready.
What the fuck
like,
are you doing?
Combing his mustache. Like what a girl would do, like just primping, getting ready. So she tells him, like, you have to take me home now because my mom's waiting for me, like I'm grounded. And then she said he walked right up to her and tried to touch her breasts, and she freaked out and said, what are you doing? I want to get out of here. This is crazy. So he says, okay, but you can't go out the same way you came in. And he's leading her towards the door, and he says, we have to go downstairs to get back outside. And she can't believe it's happening, and as soon as she walks down a few steps, she realizes she has made a mistake. And the next thing she knows, she was on her back on the concrete floor, and he's on top of her, and he puts a pillow over her head and tells her to shut up, and she just keeps screaming, and there's a pipe on the floor. And he picks it up, and he tells her to shut up or he's going to hit her with it. He tells her that he's going to chain her after she kicked him really hard, so she says, go ahead. And as soon as he goes to get the chain, she just starts running, and she doesn't even make it to the first step of the stairs when he grabs her. He puts the chain around her neck, and he chains her to the pole, and he puts another one around her stomach. And she said these chains looked brand new. So they're not the same old ones.
Right.
And then he ties her hands around her back with like a plastic rope and told her if she moves it, it'll cut her. And then he takes a rag off the floor and pushes it into her mouth, smashing her teeth against her lips until she's bleeding, and then puts duct tape over her mouth with the rag in it. Then she said he pulled down his pants and he started rubbing himself only inches away from her. And she would try and turn her head, but because of the chain, there wasn't really much she could do. And she was so scared he was going to rape her, but as soon as he was done, he pulled up his pants and without saying a word just walked upstairs. She was trying to think of ways to escape after this, but she couldn't concentrate on anything. Her head was pounding so hard, and her mind was blank, and she was like just hoping someone was looking for her. And she thought for sure that he was going to kill her. She said it was terrifying down in that basement. It was just empty bottles everywhere, boxes of magazines, a bunch of porn. And in a few minutes, he came back down with a radio and didn't even talk to her. He just plugged it in and started blaring it and then left again. She said she was praying to God, please don't let this man kill me. She said it must have been like the next morning, the next time she sees him, because the light from the basement door was kind of bright, and he turns down the TV. He brings down the TV and turns it up really loud and then turns the radio up even louder. So two things blaring. And he ripped the tape off her face and pulls a rag out of her mouth, making her scream because it hurt so bad. And he said if she screams anymore, he's going to put it right back in her mouth. He took the chain off her neck, and she said she could breathe better, but then he started grabbing her breasts and squeezing them, and she was so terrified that he was going to do something more disgusting, but then he just stopped and turned off the overhead light bulb and left her alone. She said she wonders how long he had been planning this. Like, she remembers him driving past her really slow and waving all these times, and she just kind of thought he was being nice because it was Arlene's dad and she knew him. But now she figured, like, he was probably stalking her.
Right.
And then he came back downstairs and brought her food that his mom made, and she said she was starving, but she just refused to eat it. And he said, like, he told her she had to eat it, and she's like, I just want to go home. Like, the only food I'm going to be eating is, like, the food my mother makes. He said, okay, I don't care if you starve. And he took the food back, and she's wondering how long she's going to be there. She said it feels like hours, and she's getting more and more scared as time passes. And she was crying so hard that, like, her stomach ached from crying, which is such a specific pain.
Yeah.
It's the worst. And then he comes back later with McDonald's, and she said she was so starving she couldn't help it. She ate the entire meal in, like, seconds. And then he told her that they were going upstairs and to not try anything. And he made her get into his bed, which was in, like, the dining room. But he, like, made a fort type of fence thing around his bed, like a fake bedroom.
Yeah.
Like, it looked like a children's fort. And he made her get in, and there was barely enough space for both of them because it was, like, a twin bed.
Ugh.
And he said that his hands were all over her, and he was grabbing her breasts, and she closed her eyes and prayed, and then he just fell asleep. And she said she just laid there wide awake thinking about how the police must be looking for her by now. Her parents have definitely called the police, and someone has to find her. Michelle said that she saw Gina went missing on the news from the same spot her and Amanda went missing, and that she recognized Gina because she knew Gina's sister Mayra from when she used to hang out. Yeah. She prayed he didn't take Gina, then she said she could hear Gina screaming in the basement. She told Castro that she knew that she took Gina, or that she knew he took Gina. And the next day he gave her a notebook and a pencil to distract her. And that's the end of part 1. This is much longer than I thought. But it's a clean stopping point.
Oh my god.
Isn't that terrible?
Just, like, why?
I don't know.
Why?
I don't know.
3 people.
3 people.
Why? You had a whole ass girlfriend.
He had a girlfriend, a 20-year-old girlfriend.
Like,
not
what?
like an old girlfriend that maybe he was sick of.
What the fuck?
I don't know.
So scary. It's like what my nightmares are.
Literally. And they're looking for them, and they're right there.
That's terrible.
It is terrible. All right, if you've stuck around this entire time, thank you. You could really break this up yourself and make this a 4-parter. I just couldn't stop.
Yeah.
I had to get all of them at least. It wouldn't make sense to pick back up with someone else.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to put out part 2 on Friday. There won't be a one-shot on Friday because part 2 is going to be like a full-length episode.
Yeah.
And then part 3 will be out on Wednesday next week. So thanks for sticking around. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at almostpod. You can email us at almostpod@gmail.com. Questions, comments, suggestions, concerns, anything of the nature. The Patreon is patreon.com/almostpod. Part 1, 2, and 3 are up right now if you don't want to wait at all. And then if you're listening on Apple Podcasts,
give us a 5-star rating, write us a review, like, subscribe, make sure you download the episodes.
yes, please.
Yeah, that goes towards our, like, overall numbers and everything. Subscribe, share with your friends, family. It helps them find us so they can also listen.
Please. And I'm sorry this was so long, but this is the longest one that I'll have.
You can find us on YouTube.
No, please don't. Every day I consider just taking all of it off YouTube. I don't even want to fucking deal with it.
Whatever, fuck them.
All right. Thanks for sticking around. See you Friday.
Okay, bye.
For the full episode, no one shot, part 2.
Goodbye.
Bye.